select Caleb Williams, quarterback, Southern California.
What's up, Bears fans? We waited a week for it, and the schedule is finally out. Honestly, Jeff, it's been kind of like the Bears offseason. It's been like a very divisive schedule for some people. Some people love it, some people hate it. I've seen it both ways. Either way, it's out, and it's actually a really favorable schedule to a point. Definitely one of the easier schedules in the NFL, much better schedule than we had last year. So we'll see how it goes. We'll get into that here in a little bit, but we are your hosts. I'm Tim Willis, and to my left here tonight is my brother, Jeff Willis. Jeff, why don't you say hi to the folks here on this fine Friday evening?
How's everybody doing? It's good to see everybody here. There's several of you that are here almost every week. Cliff, I see, is in there. You're here all the time. It's good to see you, buddy. Good. It's a good week this week. We saw the schedule come out. It's there's definitely some good and bad in there. There's several analysts out there had some people liked it a lot and some people really disliked it a lot. It just there's also some in between in there too. But I just kind of wanted to mention that I feel like there's a good little setup here in the schedule this year, at least at the start, for the offense and a rookie quarterback to kind of get going and get into a groove. And it's a tough back end of the schedule, and we will get to it here in a minute, guys. But I do like kind of the way it's set up, at least at the start for this young quarterback in this offense that's going to start to bud together and doesn't have much chemistry yet as a total unit. So I'm interested to see how that goes early on. As Tim said, there's a lot to talk about with this schedule and who all they're going to be playing. Some interesting dynamics here, especially late in the season with, there's 3 games in a 10-day set late in the season in December. That one's going to be a tough go of things. So, and a lot of divisional games, not one until week 11. So that's late in this. I mean, a lot of divisional games late in the season, I should say, and they're all not till week 11. So that's a tough way to go at the end. So like I said, it's a little bit of hit and miss in this schedule. There's some good and some bad. So we'll break it down more for you guys. I wanted to mention to you guys, we'll give you guys give some more people a chance to get in the chat here, but I kind of wanted to break this down for you guys because I thought it was pretty cool on Tuesday night. I'm not a big guy, but as most of you guys know, I play softball on a couple different slow pitch teams. And, I don't really have a ton of huge power or anything like that. I've hit a few home runs over the course of my, last couple of years playing with my teams. But most of the home runs I hit are all inside the park home runs because I'm pretty fast. But it was pretty nice on Tuesday. We were late in the game and we were down by a whole bunch and we were trying to roar back. And I had the bags packed for me and I come up to the plate. And guys, I hit a freaking moonshot. There we have this. So at this particular field that I play on, there's this netting that goes up on the fencing because they don't want the ball to go too far, onto the highway. So this netting comes up. Oh, it's a good at least 20 feet up over the fence where the fence is. And there's a railing that goes over that holds it up. So there's netting that goes up at least 20 feet over the fence. So most people, when they hit home runs, it hits that netting and it doesn't go any further than that. Well, this particular one I hit on Tuesday, I'm telling you guys, it was probably maybe 5 feet below that top of that railing when it hit that net. I freaking smoked this ball, and it's probably the hardest ball I ever hit in my life, and obviously a grand slam. So it was pretty sweet. But I just wanted to mention that to you guys because it was a pretty cool moment for the team, and we almost came back. And Aldo has a nice little sound there, a sound graphic for you guys for the sound of that shot. It did sound really hard off the bat too. It was pretty nice. I got to give myself a little pat on the back. So I don't really like to do that a ton, but I will for this particular case. And it was a grand slam. So anyhow.
Man, it just shows what kind of incredible athlete you are hitting slow pitch softball over the fence.
Hey,
Super.
Not everybody can hit a slow pitch that hard, dude. I don't care who you are. So I felt like my inner Frank Thomas coming out on that. All right, my favorite White Sox player ever. So it felt pretty good. But anyways, to kind of get on with the show, I'll let Tim kind of get started here with what we're talking about. We'll just kind of let's get into it. Let's dig into week one, Tim. Week one, they're going to play the Titans. I believe it's at home. So why don't you get us started here, Tim? It is at home. Let's talk about this a little bit and what this means for us.
Well, to start, I would say this schedule is almost like a two-parter. You know, we especially going up like into that, you know, the first about 3 weeks after the bye. So weeks 1 through 10, it's a really favorable schedule. And the weird part about it is we have our first 3 games of the season are all against the AFC South. Now, if you guys don't know this, that is the AFC conference that we play, the AFC division that we play all 4 of those teams this season. And the NFC is the AFC NFC West. So we are guaranteed games against Tennessee, Houston, Indianapolis, and Jacksonville. So to start, we have Tennessee the first game, Houston week 2, and Indianapolis week 3. So our first 3 weeks of the season are all AFC South opponents. Before I get into Tennessee, I think the NFL did this intentionally, the way they've done this. It's almost like hey, Rook, welcome to the league. Here's a schedule that's a little bit more favorable to start for you. And as you build up through the season and get better and better and better, now we're going to drop the gauntlet on you, and we'll see how you perform then. And, you know, that way you're more prepared for those divisional games. But just to start, here we go with Tennessee. Now, a lot of people are looking at this game and saying, okay, this should be an easy win for the Bears. You know, cupcake game here. Tennessee's not a very good team, yada, yada, yada. Now, I will say, of the options, I mean, if you could have started with Detroit or Green Bay or Minnesota or San Francisco, you know, one of those games, that'd have been real tough sledding. Okay. But, you know, this is a little bit better of a matchup for us to start week one. However, I would urge everybody to pump the brakes a little bit. Although I would pencil this in my opinion, the Bears should win this game. Tennessee's not a bad team. Aldo's got the roster here up for us, their unofficial depth chart. You know, outside of, you know, they've got a second-year quarterback in Will Levis, who I think there's actually quite a bit of upside there. You know, depending on if they can unlock that with him, he's a pretty good quarterback, I think, or at least he was in college, and he showed some signs last year. He came out of the gate really strong that first game and then never really did a whole lot after that. But, you know, they got a pretty good backfield. Tony Pollard, I mean, he's getting up there in age a little bit, but he's solid. Tyjae Spears, I really liked him last year. I can't believe that they didn't give him more carries, you know, with an aging who's the guy they just traded away? Derrick Henry, thank you. You know, he was aging a little bit. You know, DeAndre Hopkins is a little bit older as well, but he's played really well still consistently. I don't expect that to drop off too much. Calvin Ridley was a big free agent signing for them from Jacksonville last year. Had a big bounce back year after sitting out for a season and a half. Tyler Boyd, longtime veteran for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's just been a solid contributor. The tight end, Chigoziem Okonkwo, I hope I'm saying his first name right. I had him on my fantasy team at one point last year. He's a pretty decent tight end, not bad production-wise, and he's going to offer some help for the quarterback there. And then, you know, the offensive line, J.C. Latham was the rookie drafted this year. Now, he played right tackle in college, but Jeff and I had conversation a lot about him before the draft, and, you know, we felt like this was a good possibility that he's going to get drafted to play left tackle because he's really, really good. And he, you know, he's in Alabama where he didn't have to play left tackle, but good player.
Which, by the way, sorry to cut you off, Tim, but I told you guys, we were talking about J.C. Latham a little bit before the draft because I had mentioned to you guys he was really low on a lot of big boards, and I was saying this guy's going to go a lot higher than everybody's saying he's going to go. He is very, very, very good. It is a little surprising that right off the bat, Tennessee is going to move him to the left side. But, I really do feel like this guy can play anywhere on the line. So he's insanely strong. There was a video they posted on their Twitter account, I believe, on the Titans Twitter account, of him moving this sled. And it was like some 300-something pound sled, and he was just like driving it back like it was nothing. I mean, the dude is crazy strong. And so he's going to be a very, very good player. And it's going to be an interesting test for him right away if he goes up against Montez Sweat, which I'm sure he will some. But if he's playing at left tackle, I believe Sweat lines up a lot on the other side. So we'll see what happens. But I anticipate he will get some matchups there. It'll be interesting to see how that goes for those guys in that offensive line. Skoronski is a second-year player. He's pretty good. Really and I know I dropped him, and I'm going on with some of this stuff here. But in essence, I just kind of wanted to get through this a little faster. But really, this graphic here, guys, let's give Aldo a pat on the back for this, because he's got some great stuff here with these graphics he's got going on here with first of all, with the teams he's showing here with the depth charts, and also with the other ones. He's got the new graphics for us for our show. It's just some great stuff. So thanks a lot, Aldo. This stuff is awesome. And there's a little side note here on the bottom that he's got that Will Levis was 3-6 last season as a starter, as a rookie, and he had a 58.4 completion percentage, which was the worst in the league. So I do agree with Tim. He's got some upside, but this is, he does have some weapons around him here. I thought it was interesting that they felt like pairing Tyjae Spears with Tony Pollard, because Spears is really a quick, fast kind of guy. He's shifty in the hole, and he's very, very fast. And obviously it's really kind of similar to the style that Pollard runs. He's not a very strong runner in between the tackles guy. That's why it works so well with him and Elliott in Dallas. And it was just kind of odd to me that they went that route when they moved on from Henry and they paired him with Spears. But I do still anticipate Spears getting more of a workload now than he did last year, because he's a very good player, in my opinion. So the Titans, it is interesting. It's going to be an interesting first game. I agree. There was a comment, I believe it was Cliff, mentioned that they're not as good as some of these other opponents that the Bears have on their schedule. And I agree with that. It's an interesting test for their first game, though, still, because their defensive line is very, very good with Jeffrey Simmons there in the middle. So I'm not sure if we have a graphic of that, Aldo, but Jeffrey Simmons, if you guys don't know, is one of the better interior defensive linemen in the entire league. Here it is right here. Thanks, Aldo. I appreciate it. So the rest of their defensive line isn't really anything to I guess, like really scare you out of your pants or anything like that. Sweat's a rookie. We'll see what he does. Simmons is very, very, very good, though, and he could potentially be a problem in there with the first-year center for the Bears here that they didn't have last year with either Bates or Coleman Shelton, whichever one wins that job. So it's going to be tough sledding for those guys in the middle, and the guards also, Davis and Jenkins, whoever has to deal with this guy. So you're going to see a lot of double teams, I'm sure. Hopefully we can hold up with a rookie quarterback with this guy bearing down on him on third down. So also their outside rushers, Arden Key is pretty good, and Harold Landry's pretty good. So this defense is pretty decent. Their defensive backfield is good. McCreary's a good nickel. L'Jarius Sneed, I believe they just got him from Kansas City in a trade, if I'm not mistaken. And they paid him good money. So this guy, he's a very good player. Also, they have a pretty good back end here. This is not a team to scoff at, guys. I mean, I agree that it might not be as strong as some of the other teams we see in the schedule on paper right now without injuries. Okay, but let's say all that before everything else. On paper, without injuries, without accounting for how much everybody improves and everything like that, this is just a generalization. This is still a very strong team for the Bears to go against. So I wouldn't just chalk it up as like an easy win. This defensive interior for Tennessee with Jeffrey Simmons there is going to make life tough on Caleb Williams if we don't have an answer for him. So hopefully that's the case, and we have a chance to get some of our weapons, some opportunities to move the ball around a little bit, because I do think that even with that good back end that they have in their secondary, that, with what the Bears have now, the weaponry we have on offense, that we can get some things done even in our first game. But guys, we have to remember though, it's the first game. It's not going to all click offensively right away. That takes a little bit of time usually. So, I'm expecting a run heavy first game. I expect the defense to play better than the offense does right away off the bat. But hopefully we do still get the win there. I do anticipate they should get the win. I feel like they should get the win. especially with all this time to prepare for it. It's not Green Bay like it was last year. So hopefully they'll have a pretty good answer for Tennessee. If
well,
you don't have any more,
Jeff, let's see if the chat can keep track for us. Let's go ahead and give our predictions on each game, win or loss too. And well, I think there's a good chance. I know, but I think there's a good chance you and I can agree on most of these. And if we don't, maybe they can just separate it out for us. I think we'll end up in the same area. I'm going to be realistic. I can tell you that. I'm not going to go out here saying that the Bears are going to go 13-4 or 14-3 or some nonsense like that. I think that's very unrealistic. But we'll see. We'll see where we go with that. So I would say both of us agree that this should be a win, correct? We'll go ahead and say that.
Yeah, I'm going to say win, and let's move on so we can blast through some of these other ones.
Agreed.
All the time here. So, all right, week 2. This one's going to be our first big test, in my opinion. Prime time and at Houston playing the Texans. CJ Stroud. Which, by the way, before I move on too fast, Tennessee, Nate Davis used to play there, so that's a revenge game for him. So, anyways, week 2, playing Houston. CJ Stroud, great rookie of the year last year, had a phenomenal rookie season. Texans came along strong. They were very, very good. That's a tough test for us in week 2. I think our defense, it's a really tough test for our defense. And I'm interested to see how the offense does. Will Anderson was a very, very good player as a rookie last year. So how we hold up against him is going to be interesting too. And I really think that, altogether, this team is if the Bears can compete in week 2, this is going to be a real test of what we might be seeing for the rest of the season. So let's kind of look at this depth chart here that Aldo has on the screen. Will Anderson is the guy I mentioned first. He had a very good rookie season. As many of you guys know, they signed Danielle Hunter in the offseason, who's obviously an established edge rusher. So they have a good presence up front. Danico Autry is, an established player, very good player. And, they've got some younger guys in the back end. Stingley had a pretty good year last year. He had some injury issues early on, but he was pretty good last year. Petre's a pretty good safety. Okuda, he had some issues in Detroit. He wasn't very good, but I think he's become a little bit better player in Houston. He's coming on a little bit more. And then they drafted Kamari Lassiter this year to be their nickel. So there's some interesting pieces there defensively. I think that the Bears, with the offensive weapons we have, we can move the ball on them. To me, it's a matter of, are they going to be far along enough and ready to be to that point in the second game of the year? I hope they are, but we'll have to see. Offensively for Houston, obviously we know about CJ Stroud. They signed Joe Mixon in the offseason after Cincinnati let him go. That's an interesting move for me because they've had some issues with their running back room in the last couple of years, getting production there. And so I feel like going and getting a guy like Mixon, who even at his age is still getting it done. I think that was a good move for them. And I think he's going to be a good move for them. He's going to be a good option to give the ball to, because we can't just rely on CJ Stroud all the time. If we're Houston, you have to be able to take some of the load off his back. And Joe Mixon's, like I said, an established player and a very good one at that. So if he still has anything left in the tank, I mean, this is a really good move for them. Dalton Schultz is a good weapon. Nico Collins had a big year last year. They made the move for just Stephon Diggs with Buffalo. Tank Dell, obviously speedy receiver. And their offensive line is very good. Larry Tunsil's been one of the better offensive linemen over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, guys. And he doesn't get a lot of credit. Nobody talks about him a lot, but he is a very, very good player and has been for a long time now. So he's going to be a tough matchup for whoever goes up against him. Blake Fisher, we know very well. Tim and I, as he went to Notre Dame, he's the rookie at right tackle. And their interior is pretty decent with Juice Scruggs right there in the middle at center, who was their draft pick last year from Penn State. So this is a pretty good offense, guys. Obviously, CJ Stroud was rookie of the year last year, threw for 4,000 yards, 23 touchdowns, and just 5 interceptions, as Aldo has on the graphic there at the bottom of the screen. So as you guys know, that this is, obviously a very difficult offense to go up against. And it's going to be, in my opinion, the first true test for Eberflus next year's defense. Outside of, Tennessee's not a huge test to me offensively. This is the real test offensively for Flus's defenses against Houston. Can they limit what CJ Stroud and company do? And if they can, I think the Bears stand a chance in the game. That being said, if you don't have any more thoughts on it, Tim, since we're doing this prediction thing, I guess this is my first loss for the Bears on the year, in my opinion, is Sunday night in Houston. But go ahead and give your thoughts before we move on to the next topic, next team.
This is where we disagree. I personally, the Texans offense doesn't scare me as much as their front four. Joe Mixon is a solid player and has been for a long time, and he's one of the last bell cows we've seen in the NFL at running back, but he doesn't really scare me too much anymore. Stephon Diggs is the big wide receiver they've got now, and I think Jalen can control him and handle him pretty well. The other guys, they're solid, but I don't really see anything here that tells me that we can't cover them. And the offensive line, yeah, Larry Tunsil's really good, and he's been good for a long time, but, he's getting up there in age too, and now he's got to go up against Montez Sweat a lot. Blake Fisher's also going to have to go up against Montez Sweat as a rookie. That offensive line doesn't scare me too much. It's actually a pretty good one for our offense, or our defensive line. I think that's a pretty good matchup for them outside of Tunsil, and even then, I think that we can get to him too. Like I said, defensively, I'm not real scared of the secondary as much. It's a solid secondary, but we have got so many weapons now that I would take our offensive weapons against that secondary any day of the week. But it's that front four and really that front seven that scares me. Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter on opposite sides. That's a lot. That's a good pass rush. I'd be hoping that we'd get Will Anderson up against Darnell Wright more, because he controlled Darnell Wright controlled Will Anderson that game they played in college when it was Tennessee and Alabama, pretty much dominated him. But Danielle Hunter is an animal, and he had his way a little bit with Darnell Wright last year in Minnesota. So that scares me a little bit. That front four and really that front seven in totality scares me a bit. But I like how the Bears match up with Houston. I really do. And I know that primetime's kind of been not really a strong suit for the Bears, but I think I think they're going to take a win here. I like the Bears in this game. A lot of people don't, but I like the Bears. And, I think, Houston had a great season last year, and, everybody expects them to be on the up and coming, but, you never know. Teams sometimes don't do that. They kind of take a little bit of a step back. I like Stroud, but I wouldn't say that he's necessarily going to have just as good of a season this year as he did last year. That remains to be seen. So, I like the Bears in this game, so I'm actually going to say the Bears start off 2-0.
Yeah, I just think it's a tough game for your second game of the year. Like I said, defense is almost always ahead of offense early in the season, and they have, like you said, their front seven it's tough. And if they can get after Caleb at all, I mean, it's going to be tough sledding in that game. So I just feel like that's a really difficult matchup to go on the road on Sunday night against a playoff team last year with a rookie quarterback and come out with a win. So in my opinion, I don't see that happening. I hope so, but I just don't see it. So let's go ahead and move on here to week 3. They play the Colts in Indianapolis.
I'm going to go to this game. Just so if anybody's going to go to this game, I fully intend to go there. I think my work is going to get me some tickets. So if you guys are going, hit me up on Twitter and we can hang out and meet up in Indianapolis. So I only live like an hour from Indy. So if anybody is going to this game, I'll be there. Meet up with me.
He only lives an hour from Indy.
I think it's hanging out.
He always says hour like that, so I make fun of him every time he does.
I don't want to hear it, Jeff Rowe. Let's not go there.
Anyhow, anyways, this game is I feel like this is an interesting one for us here. Let's say the Bears do lose to Houston. They're going to be looking for a bounce back, and this one is a revenge game here. The Flus is loose for this one. This is his former team. Several of the coaches on the defensive coaching staff coach for the Colts. So this is going to be an interesting game here for us. And they are, most of you guys know, Anthony Richardson, the rookie quarterback from last year, got hurt, I believe, like 4 games into the season. Yeah, he started 4 games as a rookie and completed 50 of 84 passes for 577 yards, as Aldo has on the screen there. So he didn't play much. He did look pretty decent, though, when he was in for a rookie. And this guy has all the talent in the world. I mean, he's just got an absolutely electric arm. And he a phenomenal athlete to boot. So if this guy can piece it together, he is going to be a serious, serious problem for a long time. Now, I don't know where he's going to be at coming into week 3, but he's still going to be dangerous. Now, as we all know, Jonathan Taylor, their running back, he's been an established player and a very, very good one for 2-3 years now. And just, anybody who has him in fantasy league would know he's just, one of the better ones you can get. So this offense does have some pieces. A.D. Mitchell, I told you guys before the draft, he was one of my favorite receivers that was going to be available. He did have some character concerns and stuff, but obviously the Colts didn't see too much of an issue with it. And if he can get it together with them, wow, he can be a serious weapon. They have some intriguing receivers over there with him, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, and Alec Pierce. Now, Josh Downs is the speedster there, but the rest of them are all big guys. Michael Pittman, A.D. Mitchell, Alec Pierce are all big. They all got to be at least 6'3". They're all very, very tall receivers. So they have an interesting group there. Now, this offensive line to me is going to be the key because they only have the one guy here. Really, Ryan Kelly's okay too, but Quentin Nelson is the one guy in the middle that's an established dominant player. The rest of them are kind of questionable. Bernard Ryman was a draft pick for them last year. He was a rookie, I believe, a second rounder. He's starting at left tackle. Some questions there is how good is he really going to be? But I did like him going into the draft last year. And the other guys I'm really not even too sure who these guys are. Braden Smith, never even heard of Will Fries, however you pronounce that. So it's going to be interesting to see how our defensive line goes up against the Colts. Hopefully we get more of a difference from them, more production out of especially the interior part of our defensive line this year than we did last year. I feel like Dexter's going to make a big jump. At least I'm hoping so. And it's going to be interesting to see how he plays specifically against this offensive line, in my opinion, going up against Quentin Nelson in the middle there specifically. So I think this is a good matchup for the Bears. I think it's a very winnable game. Defensively, they're pretty interesting as well here. So Latu is their first-round draft pick. I think he's going to come into the league and be a good player right away. I think he could very easily be a problem for the Bears right off the bat. DeForest Buckner, as we all know, played for Matt Eberflus. He was instrumental in getting him to Indianapolis. He's a very, very good player. He could be a problem for us on the defensive interior. So, again, there's 2 games in a row here where we've got defensive lines that are a bit concerning for the Bears to go up against and Caleb Williams. Now, that being said, the rest of these – what else we've got going on with the rest of the rosters, I feel like are winnable games for most part outside of Houston. I feel like they could win. I just don't see it happening. Now, Indianapolis, that being said, I feel like what we're seeing from that roster and what we saw from them last year, they're a good team. But again, this is a winnable game for the Bears. The way they played last year and the growth that they should make this year, the jump they should make this year is a winnable game. And I expect them to do so against the Colts in week 3. What are your thoughts?
I also think they should win this game. And offensively, I'm not super concerned with Indianapolis. I think our defense is the better of the two. Their receivers don't scare me too much. Adonai Mitchell would be the one that I'm kind of afraid of. But what has Michael Pittman done up to this point? Not a whole lot.
He's still a good player.
He's an okay player, but I'm not super.
Yeah, remember the Colts have had revolving doors at quarterback for years. So
yes. Well,
it's kind of unfair to him.
I think Jonathan Taylor is heading toward that decline, and he started showing that a little bit last year. Offensively, I'm not as concerned with them. I think our defense is definitely the better of the two. That front 7, though, we were talking about Houston's. Indianapolis is really good, too, and that secondary is pretty good, especially the slot corner.
Kenny Moore is good. Very, very good.
Very good. So that scares me a little bit, but I'm not super concerned. I think we should win this game. And so I'm going to go ahead and call that one. I'm going to say we win this game as well. Moving on.
I was going to say, before you move on too quick, I was just going to say I would be very surprised if Matt Eberflus was going to go into Indianapolis with his team, knowing where they're at and needing to, have a good season this year and hopefully get to the playoffs. He's going to go in with a chip on his shoulder against Indianapolis and want to get that win. So I feel like they will get the win that week. Even though Indianapolis is a tough place to play, it's very loud there. So, I do still think they'll get it done there. So let's go ahead and move on to week 4.
Yep. And hey, here Aldo says we have the Bears at 2-1, but just to correct, I have them at 3-0 right now, and Jeff has them at 2-1 because I thought they'd beat Houston as well. But this is where I changed my mind. Okay, we walk into week 4. We are on the road, or excuse me, we are at home against the LA Rams. I think this is a game where we're starting to get worn down a little bit. We're traveling, or we're coming back home from the West Coast here, or not from the West Coast. I'm sorry. We come back home, but I think this is a game where we lose. They got a good offense here in LA. This is our first big challenge, I think, offensively for our defense. Stafford, the wily vet, Kyron Williams had a big time year last year at running back. They've got great weapons at wide receiver. Nakua and Cooper Kupp, both studs. That's hard to stop those guys. And then the offensive line is solid. And then defensively, they're solid. I know they're going to be without the dominant 3 technique, Aaron Donald, who retired, but it's still a good defense and it's still a good defensive line. I think this is where the train stops a little bit and we get our first loss.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that part of it. This is a tough matchup. I mean, the head coach over there, Sean McVay, knows what he's doing. I mean, he's been doing it for a long time now. He's been to a Super Bowl. He's won a Super Bowl, with Matt Stafford.
For him and Waldron too here. This game will be a reunion for the two.
Yeah, it is going to be an interesting reunion for those guys. And not only just that, but I mean, like you said, Stafford is that wily veteran. If he's healthy, he's got weapons there. We all know what Cooper Kupp's capable of. I picked up Puka in waivers last year, right as the season was getting going. And he was a stud for me, obviously, all year. I mean, we all know what he did. I believe he's the offensive rookie of the year, if I'm not mistaken. No, I'm sorry, he wasn't, because it was Stroud. But he had a huge year for a rookie wide receiver. I think he had 1,400 yards or something. It was crazy. So in any case, I mean, they've got weapons out there, and Sean McVay is one of those coaches that has shown he don't care what his offensive line looks like. He's going to find a way to move the football. So that's the one big concern for me there is, can our secondary find answers as good as they are to stop these guys? Because like I said, Sean McVay has found ways over the course of his career. As you see here, his offensive line isn't anything to squawk about or anything to praise. Alaric Jackson, left tackle, Jonah Jackson. Steve Avila was their draft pick last year at center. He's okay. He's a growing player. Kevin Dotson, Rob Havenstein. I mean, nothing really that's jumping out at you. So, but like I said, again, the guy finds a way to move the football on offense. Always has. He just does. So that's my one concern. Are we going to be able to slow them down a little bit? And defensively, obviously, they still have a good defense. Even though they lost Aaron Donald, let's look at this defense a little bit here. So obviously, the first-round pick was Jared Verse. We mocked him to the Bears in a trade down when we did a mock draft here on the show. Jared Verse is a good player. Now, guy can stop the run. He's got pass rush upside. Not as much as some of the other rushers that were in the draft, in my opinion, but he does have some good rush upside. He's a very safe player. I think he's going to be really good for this defense. Braden Fisk was another draft pick of theirs this year. He's a pretty good player, and I believe they were teammates, if I'm not mistaken. So these guys should pair up pretty well here. Now, outside of that, they have pretty good weapons, or pretty good defensive backfield. Tre'Davious White's a good player. Yeah. This is a good team. Cam Curl, good player. This is a tough team to play against here. So this is a true test, and I agree with you, Tim. I don't see the Bears getting it done here. So I think they start 2-2 with this loss at home to the Rams. So let's go ahead and move on to week 4 here.
Week 5.
Week 5. I'm sorry.
Should be London, right? Nope. Carolina.
No, sorry. Carolina. So Carolina, I believe this game is it in Carolina? I can't remember for sure.
It is in Carolina, yeah, I believe.
So anyhow, we all know it's in Chicago. I apologize, guys. So anyways, this is a home game, and I fully expect us to get a win here, as most of you guys should.
I don't even think we need to waste our time with this one. We
know Carolina, plenty about Carolina. We got our pick from Carolina to get our guy Caleb Williams. So
this should be a win.
We're familiar with Carolina. They do have a good defensive presence in Derek Brown in the middle there. He's a very good player, defensive interior lineman. he's going to be a problem. But other than that, they do not scare me a ton. J.C. Horn is very good corner, but like you said, the Bears have a lot of weapons too. So I don't see this game being much of an issue, and I feel like the Bears should handily win this one. Maybe not a blowout, but they should take this one pretty easily, in my opinion. So I see us starting the season at 3-2 with the win against the Panthers.
I'm calling it a win as well. So that 3-2 for you, 4-1 for me. And then we move on to London. We go to play the Jacksonville Jaguars, who London has almost become like a home game for them. So
it probably will be when they move there.
Yeah, which is a good possibility. But I'm hearing they're going to build a new stadium in Jacksonville, but who knows? We'll see. This one is kind of a toss-up for me. Jacksonville's a good team. Like, they're tough. That offensive line is really good. They've got a ton of weapons. The defense is solid. You know, it's a home game, but it's in London, you know, and that's kind of become a second home for them. I do think the Bears travel better than the Jaguars do, even though that's kind of been a home game for them in the past. I think the Bears will have a bigger fan base there. I think this is one that the Bears are not going to win. I think this is going to be a tough test for them. Honestly, the one player that I'm not so certain about is Trevor Lawrence. I'm not so sure that he is the guy. I mean, he's in a maybe a slightly above average NFL quarterback. I don't think he's been this elite player they hoped he would be, but tons of weapons. Now they've got Gabe Davis there and Brian Thomas Jr., the rookie, who a lot of people felt like was one of the best wide receivers in this draft. Christian Kirk is solid. Evan Ingram's a solid tight end. Travis Etienne is a really good running back, teammate of Trevor Lawrence in college. Like I said, that offensive line is really good. That defense is really good. That defensive line especially is really good. Who was it that just got paid on their defensive line?
Why am I blanking now, too?
It's the same name as another player in the NFL, an offensive player.
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen, yeah. Josh Allen got paid. So it's a very, very good team. You know, look at this. Even on the defensive side, they're stacked. You know, Darnell Savage at corner. That's kind of funny to me at nickel corner. He's coming over from a safety in Green Bay. Darby's good. Trayvon Walker was the rookie first-round pick a couple years ago. Not really sure he's panning out all that much, but maybe. Then you see RRH we used to have over here in Chicago, good player. Eric Armstead, good player. Like it's a really good defensive unit too. And I'm going to go ahead and say this is a loss for the Bears. That jet lagged a little bit, maybe, who knows, but I'm going to go ahead and say this one's a loss, which would put them to 4-2 on my board. What do you think, Jeff?
This is the one where I'm going to disagree with you on. Honestly, first of all, I think the Bears are going to be hyped to go to London, and they're going to be ready to rock and roll when they go out there. And secondly, the Jags have just never been a team that scared me. I mean, they have some pieces on paper, sure. I don't see it, guys. I mean, to me, they just don't really they don't scare me that much. I feel like, Lawrence is the jury's kind of still out on what kind of player he's going to be or really is. They have, like I said, they do have some decent weapons. Etienne was a pretty good player last year. I feel like they overpaid for Christian Kirk 2 years ago or last year when they signed him. So I just think it's Jared said my word is law.
Listen. It looks like this guy's got a cannabis plant as his picture, and it says Jeff is the man, and his word is law. That tells me everything I need to know about this guy. I don't know. Jeff Homer for sure. 100%.
That's hilarious. Oh, but any case, I I think the Bears get the win going to London. I think they're going to be hyped up and ready to go for that. And I really don't see a ton that scares me with Jacksonville there. Honestly, they do have a good offensive line. There's some upside there too. I like Harrison a lot last year in the draft. So I do think that they're pretty good up front, but I think this is a Bears win in London. And I feel pretty good about that part of it. So let's move on to week 7. This is a bye. And we got a little graphic we want to show you guys during this bye week because it's pretty interesting. There is Aldo's got this graphic here of the top 15 touchdown leaders for the Bears over the course of their history. And it starts from their first year of existence and goes to current time. Okay. So as we watch this list, there's a couple things I'm going to point out here, but it really goes in order of like I said, whoever leads in touchdowns from the time of its existence until now. So mine's kind of lagging on me right now, so I can't see everything, but there is a name in here that comes up named a guy named George Galanix that I want to talk to you guys about in a minute here because there's an interesting story there.
There he is,
Who was the
21
best touchdown leader
touchdowns.
at one time. He had 19 touchdowns. But then as we go along here, I'm not sure where it's at because, like I said, my graphic is lagging on me.
He just came off the board. He was on there and now he fell off.
Okay, so basically, there's going to come a point here when we get into the late 90s and early 2000s, like after Neil Anderson and Walter Payton jump up the board, and there is like nobody who enters this list for like a decade. And it's crazy until I believe Devin Hester and Matt Forte are the ones who finally come onto the list. And there's just not very many, but in any case, I just feel like we have an opportunity here with who the Bears have as a unit now offensively for somebody to jump this list pretty quickly and to get onto this list pretty quickly. Because really, this is not a staggering list, guys. I mean, it's not. And like I said, I'm not sure exactly where it's at this point because it's kind of lagging on me. But by the time we got to the end, I mean, the number one guy is Walter Payton, if I'm not mistaken. And he's going to be kind of tough to catch. But I feel like the next guy who can get onto this list, in my opinion, is Cole Kmet because he's already kind of gotten to that point. He's had several touchdowns with the Bears already. I think he can make it onto this list, and several other guys will have a chance to also. So, I think it's interesting here seeing this list and all these guys and how the Bears have not had very many people score touchdowns in the last, 25 years or so. So I'm interested to see what this offense is going to do. So that's just my take on that. So now the story I was going to tell you guys about George Galanix, I'll try to make this quick. So as most of you guys know, Tim and I grew up in a town called Mishawaka, and our grandfather is a guy named Bill Sinkovics, and he went to Mishawaka High School. He graduated in 1939, and he was friends with this guy named George Galanix. They grew up together. They went to school together in Mishawaka, and Galanix was a punter and an all-state fullback at Mishawaka High School, and he ended up playing for the Bears from 1946 to 1952, I believe, was the years. And like we just told you guys, he scored 19 touchdowns. He was at one point in time on the Bears' top leaders of touchdowns. And he was also their punter. And the story that my grandpa used to tell us about, I'll let Tim start it off if he wants to, but go ahead, Tim. Tell him what you know, and then I'll kind of break down a little bit further what I've heard about it.
So our grandpa used to talk about them hanging out when they were about 10 years old. So they were in elementary school. And my grandpa grew up on what's called Battelle Street, and right down the road from there was Battelle Elementary School, which has since moved to another location, but that building is still there, and it's actually still called the Battelle Center now. And they used to hang out around this area, which was close to their homes, and George Galanix would be standing right outside of the elementary school, and he would punt the ball over towards these smokestacks across the street, and which is over a block away. As a 10-year-old kid, you're talking probably 30, 40-yard kick as a 10-year-old kid. And I remember my grandpa talking when they were older, and the guy was punting the ball like 60 yards downfield as a high school kid. So, Jeff, I don't know what part of the story that you've known or whatever, but I know he was in Mishawaka's Hall of Fame. They grew up together. They were good friends. And this guy had a massive leg on him. And from everything I understand, he was a really good punter in the NFL as well.
Yeah, the story is very similar to what I remember him telling me when I was growing up. It basically, yeah, he would kick the ball from Battelle. And if anybody who's familiar with Mishawaka, I'm sure not too many of you are, but he would basically kick it from Battelle School to the next street over, which is Sarah Street now. And yeah, it's kicking it basically a block as a 10-year-old kid, just booting the piss out of the ball. So my grandpa would just rave about this guy who was obviously significantly bigger than he was. My grandpa was a small guy, but they both boxed. They were both Golden Gloves boxers. I believe they boxed together, if I'm not mistaken. I remember him talking about how they both had boxed. So in any case, yeah, there was like I don't know if it was a smokestack, but there was like it was something along those lines. It was by Sarah Street there, what you're talking about. And my grandpa would talk about how he would kick it from the school to that structure. And it was just, he would be awed by it. So just our little George Galanick story there, that our grandpa knew a guy who played for the Chicago Bears and actually grew up with him. He's kind of a local legend. And like Tim said, he is in Mishawaka High School's Hall of Fame. So let's move along. We don't have too much time to get through this. So let's try to blast along as quickly as we can here. Getting into week 8, Commanders. This game is on the road in Washington. I was kind of surprised they didn't make this a primetime game. I guess they could still flex it that way. I'd be surprised if they did that in week 8. But in any case, as we all know, this is,
reunion. I mean, that's a homecoming game for Caleb Williams. It's a possibility. And it's in primetime the last 2 years. It was on Thursday night. So,
well, it wouldn't be on Thursday night this year because it's scheduled for the 27th. But in any case, as you guys know, it's Caleb Williams. That's where he grew up. And so it's a big matchup for him, and going up against Jaden Daniels, who was the number 2 pick in the draft. This is an interesting time for us here. And as most of you guys know, Montez Sweat, we got him in a trade from Washington after they played Washington last year. So he played against the Bears, and now he's going to have his first opportunity to go up against his former team. And I'm sure he's got some thoughts about that. So he's going to want to get revenge. I anticipate Caleb Williams going in there, ready to rock and roll, wanting to win again in his hometown. So again, I feel like this is a good matchup for the Bears. And Washington is not a great team. They have some good pieces. They have a good defensive line. I think they're a growing team. I don't think they're there yet. I feel like they had a pretty decent draft outside of some selections in there, but I felt like it was pretty good. So I think they're going to be a growing team, but I do anticipate the Bears getting a win against Washington. What are your thoughts, Tim?
W.
Okay. Well, let's move on then. Week 9. So week 9, they play Arizona, and that is also a road game in Arizona. Now, this one this is where I'm a little up in the air about, because this one has
I think it's
a little bit of trip up game. It's got a little bit of like trip up to me, because you're going to Arizona. It's all the way across the country. Kyler Murray has his moments where he can do some shit that, will like take over a game. And Arizona's not a bad team. They've got some good pieces over there. They just got Marvin Harrison Jr., who, in my opinion, was, if not the best player in the draft, one of the top 2 players in the draft. So they're gonna be a duo for a while, I feel like, if they continue to stick with Kyler Murray over the next several years. So it could be a trap game. I do think they're going to get the L there. I think they're going to go into Arizona and lose this game. I feel like they should win, because I feel like they're the better team on paper. But I feel like that's a tough game on the road in Arizona after a long stretch of games in London. You go to Washington. I feel like that's the game where maybe you do have, like Tim said, that jet lag, and you don't.
That is quite a bit across country. You're talking going from Washington to
Arizona, and they got to go home and practice first. So
so
a lot of movement. So, anyways,
I just feel like it's a trap game, and that's one that I felt that way already. So week 10.
Home.
Back home, we got New England. This one, I think, is a win. New England is just not a good team. They're a bad team across the board. The roster is it's definitely improving, but it's got a long way to go. This should be a win in my book. What are your thoughts, Jeff? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that one.
Yeah, I don't want to spend a lot of time on AM anymore. Let's not go through all the depth charts like we did. But I think, it's obviously interesting. Drake May, Caleb Williams, number 1 and number 3 in the draft. New England I feel like they're going to be an up-and-coming team too, but they're not very good right now. I feel like the Bears are going to be pissed from losing in Arizona the week before. They're going to come home and they're going to get a win against New England, because they are, in my opinion, the better team.
They're kind of like the Bears from 2 years ago. That's kind of how I look at New England right now.
A little bit, yeah. So, well, maybe a little more advanced than that. But let's move on to week 11 in Green Bay. This is, to me, the first true test of the season, the first real test of the year. What do you have? What are you made of? Because as we all know, Green Bay is where we stumble. So this is a home game, though, which is kind of interesting. So it would really suck to lose the first game against Green Bay at home. But, I mean, guys, this is the first true test. It's a tough opponent with a good roster. And I just feel like it's going to be Caleb's welcoming party to what Green Bay has to offer. So This one scares me a little bit. I just don't see the Bears getting a win against Green Bay the first time around this year. So I'm going to say an L there.
I actually like the Bears in this game. I think this is the one. They're sick of losing to the Packers. It's well known. Montez Sweat said, "I'm done losing to the Packers." I think Williams is going to come out there fired up. I think this is a win. I think this is the game. It's at home. I like the Bears in this one. I think they finally get rid of that. They get that monkey off their back and they beat Green Bay this time. At least in this game, I think they're winning. So I think they get out of the way. Now the next week, Minnesota week 12. I think they lose this game. I think the first time that Caleb Williams is going to go up against that Brian Flores defense, I think he's going to blitz the piss out of this offensive line, and he's going to make it hell on Caleb Williams. So this one, I personally think Minnesota is going to win this game. I think they're going to come out there and have the answers for Caleb early. And now I think that could change the second time around, but I like Minnesota in this first one.
This is where I disagree. I think they're going to lose this one. Or I'm sorry, I think they're going to win this one. I think they're going to be fresh off the loss to Green Bay. I think they've got a home game against Minnesota. Rookie quarterback. I think they're going to come off ready to go, and I think they're going to get a win against Minnesota at home here, as obviously they're going to play them again later on. So let's move on without getting too much into Minnesota, as we all have familiarity with them. And in week 13, again, is Thanksgiving against Detroit. This is where I have them losing here. I have them losing. I'm sorry. I did not have them losing here. I have them
winning. I
have them beating Detroit here on the road on Thanksgiving. I think this is an interesting matchup. I think the Bears are going to be ready to rock and roll here for Thanksgiving.
Detroit is not good in Thanksgiving games. They play there every year, but they don't win them. Almost never.
I just feel like the Bears, this is one of those teams. I feel like the Bears have the Lions number. And honestly, last year they blew that game that they lost. They had no business losing that game. So I just feel like the Bears, this is a good chance for them to get a 2-game win streak after that loss to Green Bay and get back up on their high horse and get closer to their goal of the playoffs. So I think they win on Thanksgiving. But the next week is the tough one that I don't think we come away with a win against San Francisco on the road.
I agree.
After Thanksgiving, even with the extra break after Thanksgiving, I just don't see them going over to San Francisco against that team and getting a win in San Francisco. That's an awfully tough matchup. So
San Francisco's my Super Bowl favorite this year. I think they're going to get it done. They're such a good team, top to bottom offense. They may be the best offense and the best defense the Bears face all season. So I like San Francisco this one.
I think that's a loss for the Bears too. But going into week 15, I think this is the Bears' first 2-game losing streak. I feel like this is the one where they lose to Minnesota. They're going on the road on Monday Night Football. They're going to be a little down from that loss against San Francisco. And this is, it's in Minnesota. We know the environment there. It's really annoying with all those horns going off. And I just feel like it's one of those things where, this is going to happen at some point. You're going to get your back against the wall. You're going to have to face some resiliency. There's going to be a 2-game losing streak at some point. It's a divisional opponent. This is where I see them getting their first back-to-back losses against Minnesota on the road on Monday night.
I like them in this game. I think the Bears win this game. I think they make some adjustments to Brian Flores, or at least Caleb Williams makes some of those adjustments to Brian Flores' defense. I like the Bears in this one. I think we have the better quarterback of the two. Without seeing either one of them play, I personally think Caleb Williams is going to be the better player. But I think this is where we probably see J.J. McCarthy here, most likely, if we haven't seen him yet. I think that's where he's finally going to be in there for sure. So I actually like the Bears in this one. And week 16, I have the Bears losing this one. I think they lose to Detroit in this game. I think they split the series 1-1. Detroit's a good team. I think they find a way to win one of those games for sure. It's going to be good. I agree with you that we've had their number, especially defensively, but I think they find a way to win that game. And that would, to me, I don't know what I've got the record at right now, but I like Detroit in that one.
This is the one where I'm probably going to catch some flack because, like I told you guys, I just feel like they have the Lions number. Last year they had no business losing that game they lost, And I feel like they're going to sweep the series against the Lions this year, in my opinion. I really do. And it could come back to bite me, but I just feel like this is a good opportunity for the Bears to show who they are in Week 16 against the Lions. They're both going to have playoff implications likely at this point. It's a home game. Show who you are. Get it done against a divisional opponent, and I think they will. So this is where I think is going to be a problem, though. Going Week 17, short time. We'll only get a 4 days of rest, and then back home again. They don't have to do any travel, but they're playing Seattle, who's a very good team. Shane Waldron, as we know, came from Seattle. This is a tough one for me, and I don't think the Bears are gonna take Seattle down on 4 days of rest. Going into, they might be doing a little bit of looking ahead to Green Bay in Week 18 here. So I just think at this point, I think the loss there is Seattle, in my opinion, is what we're going to see. That's a very good team, and it's going to be tough sledding on 4 days rest.
I'm kind of up in the air on this one because I think the Bears are the much better team on paper. And like you said, that rest is a tough one. I would agree with that. But it's Waldron reunion to Seattle. I like the Bears in this one. I think they win this game. I agree with you. I think that 4 days of rest is going to be kind of sucky. But they've said before they kind of like that because then they get like 10 days off. So players like playing on that short rest. I like the Bears in this game. I do. So I'm gonna take a W.
I don't think they get Seattle, but I think this is where the Bears finally show their true colors is the next week, because I think they're going to be looking ahead against Seattle to Green Bay on the road, Week 18. This game is going to have playoff implications. This game I can almost guarantee will be flexed to a night game, probably Sunday night. I would be betting on that because I feel like both these teams are good enough to be where this is going to have, like I said, playoff ramifications. So that game is where I think the Bears finally show what they are made of. And Caleb is going to show what we might expect for the next several years. He's going to go on the road to Green Bay, and he's going to get it done at Lambeau. And he's hopefully going to put out the belt and say, I own you to the Lambeau crowd, because that would just be wonderful to see that. But in any case, I'm joking a little bit, but really, I think it would be I really think there's a chance that we could see what they're made of late in the year going into Lambeau and getting a win there. And that would put us at 10 wins. And I think it would get us in the playoffs.
This one's tough for me because my heart's telling me I really think the Bears could pull the sweep here. I think Caleb Williams is bringing that personality, that moxie, that dog that I think that he could be like that Aaron Rodgers to them. I'm not saying that he is at that point, talent-wise yet, but I don't know. There's something about him. And this is a good team. I think they could do this, but my mind is telling me don't get too ahead of yourself because they do this every year. They just can't seem to find a way to beat Green Bay, especially in the big moment, in the big game. I'm going to go with my heart. Even though I said I've been telling myself it's a loss, I'm going to go with my heart and say they get the sweep of the Packers this year, and I'm going to take the Bears, which is going to give me I think that's going to give me 11 wins. But I like Green Bay, I like Chicago in this game.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to sweep Green Bay. I think that's a lot to ask for. That's a tall task. I do think they can beat them on the road, though. I just think that first game, that's the real test for the whole season, and I think that's where Green Bay is going to get us, and we're going to have one of those moments where it's like, oh my God, here we go again. We can't beat Green Bay. But I think late in the season is where we're going to turn it around, and I think Caleb's going to say, no, this ain't happening. Let's get to the playoffs. And I think this is going to be one of those times where he's growing enough and the team is good enough around him to where they're going to get it done late in the season, and they're going to get it done in the fourth quarter, hopefully. So I do have them at 10-7. I have them going into the playoffs with that record. I'm not sure if they win the division at 10-7.
Yeah.
It'll be close. In my opinion, I think it's going to come down to Green Bay and Chicago for the division and not Detroit. And I'm going to catch some flack for that too, because but I think Green Bay is damn good and they're only getting better. And I feel like Detroit, in my opinion, I felt like they really, I don't want to say they made a mistake in paying for Jared Goff, but I don't see him as he's not a true difference maker. And, the Bears flustered him last year when they put pressure on him. So we'll see what happens. But I think it's going to come down to Detroit Green Bay and Chicago for the division. But I see you guys have a lot of good comments in here. I really feel bad. I wanted to get to some questions tonight, but we took a little bit too long with some of the early games on the schedule, and I apologize for that, guys. But in any case, some of these comments are cracking me up. Jared's making me laugh with some of my comments.
Who is this guy? He's clearly a homer of yours. Did you pay this guy to come on here and like?
No, honestly, no.
Like, what is happening here?
Well, I just know I got the goods, bud. I don't know what to tell you. So, in any case, so guys, let's. I appreciate you all being here as usual. If you don't mind, give us all a follow. I'm at _Jeff Willis on X. I did change my Twitter handle for you guys. So, like I said, at _Jeff Willis. Tim is at Tim Willis 24. You can find Aldo, obviously, our executive producer and the man at Barroom Network. And guys, please give this video a like so we can continue to do what we do for you every Friday and bring you great content. So
quickly, I'm not going to miss you. You know, jaw like a jaw, JAW. Yeah. I'm not going to miss you at all. Not at all.
Yeah. In any case, we appreciate you guys being on here. We love all the great comments and all the compliments for us. So, real quick, Vizo, I'm going to answer your question since you got it in right at the end here. He wants to know what addition polls will add. In my opinion, I think there's still an outside chance that Ngakoue gets re-signed to another one-year deal, but I don't think he's going to get $10 million a year. They just need someone who's going to fill in and be a starter. He's got familiarity, and I just, if he's healthy enough, I think he makes sense as a stopgap because I don't think anybody else is going to pay him any money.
No, I think it's Ngakoue, and he gets about $6 million a year.
That sounds about right to me too. So that's a great question, Joe. But that's our thoughts on that. We appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot for being here. But again, we'll see you next week. Thanks as always. Claw and bear down.
The Willis Twin Towers podcast is a Barroom Network production. Jeff and Tim Willis are the co-hosts and co-producers. Aldo Gandia is executive producer. Music is licensed from Pond 5. Any copyrighted material used was done under the Fair Use Doctrine for commentary, criticism, and informative purposes. All of our programming is available in audio-only format by subscribing to the Barroom Network wherever you download podcasts. Videos are archived on YouTube.